CM Punk and The Rock. They had quite the rivalry a decade ago. That's right, it's been a whole 11 years since that rivalry came to an end, and we're all a lot older now. And in reality, the feud between them culminated in just 2 matches that were 3 weeks apart. Yet over 11 years later, we're still talking about it. What was the history behind this tense and combustible feud? And why were there legitimate issues behind the scenes? Dive in with us as we look into the explosive rivalry between CM Punk and The Rock. The story goes back to that period before the summer of 2011. After what can only be described as the most mediocre WrestleMania of the decade in WrestleMania 27, WWE had picked up steam and was entering its hottest period in years. While there were many to thank for that, CM Punk was arguably the single biggest driving force behind this. It all began during the famous pipe bomb promo where he targeted everybody he possibly could. While John Cena was the primary target of his frustration because he happened to be lying in the ring at the time, Punk made sure to take a shot at The Rock as well. But before that, we have to give you a little context. Just a couple months earlier, The Rock had interfered in the main event of WrestleMania 27 between The Miz and John Cena, allowing The Miz to win. The following night on Raw, he made an unprecedented move of setting up the main event of next year's WrestleMania almost a full 365 days in advance. Knowing that nobody was going to take that main event spot from The Rock or Cena, CM Punk let his frustrations be known. His exact words to John Cena were, quote, "There's one thing you're better at than I am, and that's kissing Vince McMahon's ass. You're as good at kissing Vince's ass as Hulk Hogan was. I don't know if you're as good as Dwayne. He's a pretty good ass kisser. Always was and still is." End quote. CM Punk also went on to say that the fact that Dwayne was in the main event of WrestleMania and not him made him sick. And so, that was ultimately one of the big sources of his frustration. He had been busting his backside for years, and someone who he deemed as undeserving could simply strut in and take the main event spot at WrestleMania. This is something that would be a source of frustration for fans as well for many years to come. But getting back to it, The Rock actually responded to CM Punk's pipe bomb on Twitter saying, quote, "CM Punk, it's simple business. The Rock is in the main event of WrestleMania because it draws more money in one night than you will in a lifetime." End quote. As bitter as it was to accept, it was certainly the truth. But that didn't stop CM Punk from continuing to bust his backside and have a career-defining run in 2011, one where he actively pursued the WWE Championship and came out on top at Survivor Series to kickstart his historic 434-day championship reign. 434 days may not sound like a lot when you look at superstars like Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, and Gunther, who have since exceeded that, but at the time, he was embarking on the longest WWE Championship reign in nearly 30 years. Speeding forward a bit, WrestleMania 28 came and CM Punk knew that he was never going to headline over Cena and The Rock. But that didn't stop him from having a good WWE Championship match against Chris Jericho and walking out with his title intact. By this point, he was a full-blown hero and loved by the masses. But only a few months later, that would change. July 2011 marked the 1000th episode of Monday Night Raw, and The Rock would come out and challenge CM Punk for the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble a whole 5 months in advance. Punk didn't take kindly to this, and after attempting to save John Cena from an assault, he attacked The Rock and turned into a villain. It was a rare move at the time and still is to some extent. How many long championship reigns in WWE history can you think of where the champion changes character in the middle of their run? It was a good way to get things hot for their eventual feud months later, but once the time for their feud came, it was, interesting. When we say interesting, we're specifically referring to the dynamic between CM Punk and The Rock during their promos together. The most famous one, of course, was 3 weeks before the Royal Rumble, where The Rock found himself absolutely decimated on the microphone. He was once considered to be the greatest superstar in WWE to ever hold a mic, but fans were quick to realize that what they were seeing wasn't the brash, lovable smack talker from the Attitude Era. It was Dwayne Johnson, the Hollywood star, and he wasn't nearly as cool as people thought he was. While CM Punk was cutting promos that were coming from the heart, The Rock was making poopy jokes for children. It was such a massive mismatch on the mic that it's still kind of painful to watch to this day. It was also the same promo where Punk had the famous "Your hands are too short to box with God" line. It was during a phase when John Cena always had to get the last laugh, and that wasn't going to be sacrificed for anything or anyone. It's not hard to see why CM Punk felt like he had gotten screwed over during this whole ordeal. He had real issues with the fact that he was the one holding the industry's top title day in and day out and wasn't getting the respect he felt he deserved. Main eventing WrestleMania had long been a goal for CM Punk, and he desperately pitched the idea of making the WrestleMania 29 main event a triple threat elimination match between himself, The Rock, and John Cena. There is no doubt that CM Punk deserved his WrestleMania main event moment, but from WWE's perspective, the whopping 1 million plus buy rate of WrestleMania 29 suggested that twice in a lifetime wasn't such a bad idea from a commercial perspective. This was ultimately the reason why CM Punk considered his career one big failure up to this point. The fact that he couldn't get to headline the grandest stage of them all. The feud between CM Punk and The Rock would end before WrestleMania 29 at Elimination Chamber, and surprisingly, Punk hasn't really taken any shots at The Rock since then. Even during what can be considered a bitter period for him after leaving WWE, he didn't really badmouth The Rock or spit venom his way. Perhaps he always understood the bitter reality of his situation, that the bigger names were always going to get bigger spots, and that it was just business. In reality, The Rock himself wasn't to blame for the whole ordeal of Punk not headlining WrestleMania. It was really more of an issue with The Office and how things operated at the time backstage. If anything, Punk actually admitted that he enjoyed working with The Rock. By this stage in his life, The Rock was a huge star and had a team for everything, which was one of the biggest driving forces behind why he was able to operate like a machine. Punk said that he had to have a one-on-one conversation with The Rock in a room full of people and was a bit staggered to find that every step of the promo was being planned out. CM Punk, who had a different approach, asked The Rock if they could do things differently without outright refusing what he had to say. The Rock, for his part, seemed to respect the fact that CM Punk wasn't backing down, and they had a good program together, as short-lived as it was. Since coming back to WWE in 2023, CM Punk has been kept away from The Rock because there hasn't really been any reason for them to interact. There was that one hilarious moment though, at the Las Vegas WrestleMania 40 press conference, when CM Punk said he wanted Cody Rhodes to punch The Rock in the mouth, all while The Rock looked on in the background perplexed at what he was saying. Punk even referenced the "Your hands are too short to box with God" promo when he returned to Raw before WrestleMania 40, but we don't expect any interaction beyond that. The difference between The Rock now and then is that he's taken a more old school approach to his character, rather than being the Hollywood megastar who doesn't want to be hated. We can dream, right? Thank you for watching.